Today, the episode is about art and activism, how artistic sensitivity intertwines with environmental activism. In this episode, we will talk about what skills are useful to produce art and make a living and prosper with your art. We will also talk about activism. What are the skills required to produce change in our society, to spread the message, to arrive to the others and light the hearts of others. And we will also talk about how art and activism can intertwine, help each other. I invited for this episode Joanna James Kuhn from Mallorca, a very popular ceramist and marine activist based in the city of Deia. Welcome, Joanna. It's very nice to have you here. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, and happy to be here.
Okay, so we met some times ago in Mallorca through a common friend, Marina, who I thank, and I had the chance to visit you in your beautiful house in Deia, in Mallorca. And you are based there both with your artistic activity, your shop, where you sell your beautiful ceramics, and also your activism. But how and when did you arrive to Mallorca and Deia?
I arrived in 1980, actually in October 1980, and I came by sailboat. I was sailing down in the Caribbean looking for my dream island and ended up on a beautiful private sail yacht that wanted to cross over. So I sailed for a year all over the Mediterranean and ended up in Mallorca. Came up to Dea for a month and I'm still here. Found my spot.
Yeah, and Deia is a very remarkable village. It's called the Artist Village, and it has hosted in its history a lot of artists, starting from Pablo Picasso, then Andrew Lloyd Webber, Peter Ustinov, Ava Gardner, Marty Clarvine, Pierce Brosnan, Anais Nin, and Robert Graves, who also made it his permanent place where to live. And it also hosted not only visual artists, but also other famous people like Richard Branson from Virgin. And I also read that Mick Jagger or Mike Oldfield used to play in the 80s.
Actually, Mick Jagger I didn't see, but we opened up a cafe. My husband, I met him here in Dea, and we were the place to come and play. So Mike Oldfield, he was part of the Soft Machine, and we had Kevin Ayers living here. So I had no idea. We'd serve them in the cafe. For me, I didn't know a name for themselves. So it was a funky time and with attracting lots of musicians and artists of all kinds.
And how was it in the 80s? Was it very different from now? What changed about this artistic scene in Deia and in the whole island?
Yeah, it was much more bohemian style in the day. We didn't have any stop signs or any kind of traffic. We didn't have sidewalks even. It was very simple life. I would wash my clothes in the trough, in the stone trough where the water would come down from the mountain. Internet changed everything, but in any case, it was a world.
Yeah, but it always revolved around art, so it's something of a common thread.
Yeah, just as an add-on, not just attracting an international cosmopolitan artists of all kinds, but the Mallorquin people who live in Day are also very talented in various different arts. So it's kind of inspiration that's on here.
Okay. Yeah. So you were very lucky maybe to find that place while you were doing this trip. But you told me that you have always been attracted by the sea. So the sea is like a permanent theme in your life. But how did you become an artist? And so what are the events in your life that brought you to become an artist? Getting also inspiration from the sea. living there in Deia. And when instead did your activism develop in defending, protecting the marine life? So what are the events that shaped you to become who you are? A ceramist, an activist, people who is quite renowned in Mallorca for your work and also for your engagement in the environment. So what shaped you?
As an artist, I think I just had that innately because as a child, I just naturally loved to create. And I did a lot of crafts as well as a child. And I actually would sell them. I mean, I'm talking 10, 11, 12, and into my teens. I would do a lot of craft work too. And so I think it's just an innate, I didn't even think about it. Yeah. The activism part, of course, my parents were sailors, and we would sometimes go down to the Caribbean and bareboat charter, sail the boats around the Caribbean. And in the day, especially, there were these beautiful, they're shallow atolls. So the reefs, virgin reefs, that now I don't know if they're still there even. I would just hover over them for hours, just fascinated, and until suddenly some big lobster with big claws like that at the same time has fascinated me. I guess that's just been my inspiration from early childhood that way.
But then when did you start doing actions, actual action, or organize events for? So when did you become more engaged in protecting the environment?
Actually, it was started when there were some chalets, little small chalets that are still there, that used to be just used by the family on the weekends. And so they had these old system of the septic tank. And it started to become oversaturated because when they started to rent them out, and they were occupied all summer, and all of seeping down through the rocks and coming up into the cala, and people were becoming sick, and it was stinky and nasty. And I was involved in our neighborhood association as a representative of the artists, and I decided, well, I can use, instead of as a single citizen, I would work through our association to try to see if we can get that cleaned up, because they weren't really responding at the town hall. It took 3 years of measuring the level of fecal matter in the cala before. It was Michael Douglas who was one of the speakers opening up the Robert Graves Center in front of all the cameras. We got word to him, and he mentioned it, and boy, and the next day, boing. So that's what got started.
When you involve the right people, it works.
Using his notoriety, though, help.
So I would like to go back to your art. Can you describe your art?
I feel it's evolved, of course, over the years. My senior show at university was called Urban Furniture, and it was inspired by the city. I call urban furniture like stop signs and fire hydrants and parking meters, and the whole history of how that developed. And that actually happened here too. We didn't have any urban furniture until things started getting busy around here, and then they needed to regulate the traffic. So at any rate, that was my farewell to the city, and because I knew I was going to go and live a simple life on an island in the mountains by the sea. So that has part of my inspiration is I love this island, and I don't want it, with all the population increase, if we don't regulate it, it's not, the quality of life on the land isn't going to be as good, and it's challenging to regulate the population growth and to balance it with the infrastructure that we have here. But same for the sea too, because I don't want to swim in a sea full of garbage, and the poor fish are eating all the microplastics and stuff. So that's just protecting what I love, really.
And when did you always produce ceramics as your form of art, or did you also use other means?
Oh yeah, like I say, as a kid, I was into everything, all
Everything.
materials. But the ceramics came in when I was 15 years old in high school, and my ceramic teacher, inspired me, and I became her assistant on my free classes, and that was it. I was hooked. And you can actually spend your whole life doing ceramics and never come to the bottom of it, because
Oh
there's
yeah.
so many techniques, different firing temperatures of different types of clay. It's endless. It's a real alchemy. You have to be scientific about your approach to making ceramics too.
So you started from urban themes, urban furniture, as you said, but now your main theme in art is marine life, correct?
It's going more in that direction, because my work also reflects the beauty of the nature here. It's a surf and turf. So I started doing my series of the oranges, lemons, figs, and olives, lying in the hammock in my garden, and I'm looking up at the sky, and that's what I see hanging from the trees. It's a fruit of the tree life here.
Yeah. So when did that turn happen? In the same moment you moved to Mallorca, or later?
No, actually, but I didn't have a studio, and we started this cafe and having a couple of kids. But what I would make the decorations for the walls of the cafe. So we sold a lot of fish. So I made large fish, and we hung on the walls. We have a school of fish on the wall. Then I would make fish tails with plants coming out and all stuff. I made all the lamps and the signs for lemonade sign. People were buying the signs off the wall even. And so then I started, oh, okay. I didn't think of selling them, but it was actually like a personal gallery.
Yeah, and one of your characteristics is not only that you are good in what you do, but you can also sell it. And we were talking before that that's a skill that not all artists possess. Since in this podcast, we also talk about life skills. So what are the skills that help you also prosper with your activity? And how did they form, these skills? How did you train them?
I think I like my artistic talent, I guess you call it, or interest. It also I think I just absorbed it from my family. My father was business minded, and all the kids, we're all have a business sense. Even though I'm in the arts, I still had a sense of, what are you going to do with all this stuff? Why create it if you're not going to share it around and spread the joy or the pleasure of it? Yeah, I just seem to have that. And when I got here, though, because my specialty in the university, my degree is in ceramic and glass sculpture. So I used to do a lot of glass processing. The glaze is actually a layer of glass. So the materials I love that, the density of the clay and then the translucence of the glass as a contrast. Anyhow, yeah, so I started to I do some of that still now. But wait, what was the question?
The question is, what are the skills also to be a businessman beside an artist? How do you sell your art? What are the attitudes that are useful for prosper with art?
So then but I wasn't really into the pottery thing so much. So I just had to get practical for one thing. And then I thought, okay, because the pottery sculptures are not so, in the day especially, we didn't have the kind of the people who now come to visit Deia, who would be buying big sculptures. Now there's a lot of foreigners here who have houses and stuff. So I think in general, you have to do what you love, but also to be able to distinguish yourself, do something special so that it's not the same as everybody else. So here I land here in Spain is inexpensive hand-painted ceramics. I have to learn how to distinguish myself. And I think that's a very important thing, to analyze who's going to buy your stuff and adapt it to some extent. Do your own thing as your own self-expression, but also to keep aware of, is this a sellable? But so for instance, at one point, I wasn't making a living at ceramics. We had our cafe, but I had a studio. And I was thinking, so many golf courses here. And I got this idea to make a golf bowl. And it was a handmade bowl that looked like a golf bowl on the outside. And then I would paint something special about the various different golf courses. All have some iconic thing that's special about it. And so I did that, and I had brochures and everything. And I went all around the island to the golf courses to sell the idea of these golf bowls. I even went to Dubai. They have amazing golf courses. I was visiting somebody and I did them for that. I only sold about a dozen. And so I just gave up on that. After a while, you do your best to promote it. And if it doesn't work out, well, then you move on.
Is there sometimes that's a skill to look around and see what can also be interesting for the people that are around you? Do you sometimes do things that maybe will not be sold, but you want to do them? Maybe you could say things just for yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Otherwise, so I have my bread and butter line, I call it. And that I have collectors from all over the world. And since people come back to Deia, I've been here long enough to see that this is the case. That there's something about Deia. And I even ask people, why do you keep coming back here? And they say there's something about, I charge my energies here. I charge my batteries here, or it inspires me, or that so I have a lot of repeat customers and collectors. So I keep that line, and people are happy. Every piece is painted uniquely, so it's not, you'll never find another piece that's the same. But then on the side, I can do other things. Like now I'm moving in the direction of doing more tile work. So tiles for a cleaner coast. I do a lot of custom work, which I really love to do because it stretches me in different directions that I might not have gone in, and it's challenging. So I do a lot of custom work and tile murals for people. Now, okay, if there weren't a bunch of wealthy people around the area and Mallorca in general with swimming pools, I wouldn't get the idea to do murals that would look really nice by your swimming pool, for instance. And that's a new direction I'm going to be going into in the future. So always looking to stretch my creativity.
I think one thing that can be extracted from your experience and your success is that it must be fun for you to do, and must be fun for the other people to receive. And there are many ways in which this fun for me and fun for you can be achieved in many fields. For example, I also try to apply it when I design a course. Or when I design a workshop for children or teenagers or adults. It must be fun for me and fun for them too. It must be useful, but nice to do. So this is, I think, a transversal skill that can be seen here in action. That's very interesting. Can you also instead describe your activism? What do you do? What are you trying to defend or to promote? And what are some of the initiatives that you helped organize? You told us how it started with this problem with the sewers, and then how did it develop?
We got that problem solved after Michael Douglas announced it in front of all the cameras. And then we got money from the EU. But then there have been some problems recently, in fact. Okay, so all right, but that was at the beginning. So then I was also had a part to play in the fact that we became a Mission Blue Hope Spot, because I had been inspired by Sylvia Earle many years ago from her book called Sea Change. And so this really stuck with me. And when I was out visiting my sons in San Francisco, could have been 15 years ago, maybe 14. And I saw in the newspaper that Sylvia Earle got a TED Wish. She did a talk, and they throw a bunch of money at her project, which is to create these underwater hope spots around the world. And so that you don't become a hope spot if there's no hope left in your area. So I called up the office and I got an appointment. I went over there and I said, I love this idea. Why don't you come to Mallorca? And we need you. We had 5 underwater protected areas in Mallorca, but I don't know how well they were protected. So I was so excited about this. And they said, actually, we are going to Barcelona soon, but we can't come to Mallorca right now. So I came back and I looked on the internet in 5 different languages, any marine conservation work that's going to be done. And I couldn't find anything, but I recognized the name of this global sustainability guy named Daniel Val. So I emailed him and I said, because I knew he had been doing some seminars on Mallorca some years before. And so I said to him, I can't find any marine conservation. And he said, look, I tried to get something done here because I've meanwhile moved to Mallorca. But he says it's like walking through quicksand trying to get the fisheries department to coordinate with the marine. There was an ocean, what do you call it, aquarium, but nobody was cooperating. But there was this one guy named Brad Robertson. He came from Australia to open up a dive center here. And he said that he was going around with the dive center and seeing that these protected areas weren't being protected. Started taking videos of people just taking whatever they want out of there. And it was full of garbage. So he started something, but it wasn't even on the internet at the time. And so I had a meeting with him and Daniel. And I said, look, I'm going to help you do fundraising at least. I organized some silent auction, get some other artists to contribute some of works so that then they give the profit to them. And there were some other fundraisers. Now they've got sponsors, and it was all volunteer before. Oh yeah, and then we were doing a lot of beach cleanups. And I thought, you can keep cleaning until the cows come home, but so to speak, but you're not gonna make any difference unless you better to prevent. So that was the whole idea with the creation of my marine conservation tile work, is to give a visual image in one look. Now I have some new designs that will remind people of all ages, of all nationalities, because they're coming here from all over the world, to take your garbage off the beach. Because they would have signs up in Spanish. A lot of people, or sometimes in Mallorquin, people don't read them because they're not attracted to them. So I want to have some kind of visual attractive. So there's 3 of them down at Cala Dea, and there's one in Puerto de Sawyer, Valdemosa. And I'd like to get them all over the island eventually.
That's great, fantastic. And you started by doing actions that didn't involve your art, and then your art got involved too. So you put together these 2 activities and passions and important elements that are in your life. So art and activism don't always go together. There are some artists that are more introspective, interested in their interiority, their expression, especially in visual art, since it's often produced alone. Rarely you do maybe a painting or a sculpture in 2 people together. It's usually a single man project. Other artists instead are very much interested in spreading a social message. Sometimes maybe it's their main interest. So sometimes art is just a means to an end. Other people instead become famous, become renowned, and use their notoriety, as Michael Douglas did in that case with you, or Jane Fonda, as you mentioned also previously. So what is your personal combination of art and activism?
I think in the beginning, it's more self-expression. Like, I just came from Barcelona and I went to see the Picasso Museum there. He was doing that as not just self-expression, but I believe also constantly being affected by things in his life, and also combining with other artists in a kind of visual movements, like in the Cubism period, and he believed the Blue period was a reaction of his own personal life. But then he painted Guernica during the Civil War, so he did both. It was a kind of combination of his work, and I think that's probably my same situation. Excuse me.
No problem. You mentioned that Sylvia Earle was one of your inspiring figures. Were there other inspiring figures, people you looked up to, or books you read that really changed your way of doing things, of seeing the world?
Oh, sure. I think probably one of the first things that I did, I had a boyfriend when I was 18, and he was involved in this Institute of Self-Actualization, which was in the States, a Danish guy. The guy was involved with the EST movement. I don't know if EST in the day. And then he spun off and did this ISA, which is Institute of Self-Actualization. That started me on a self-actualization journey in my life. And that was a biggie, that just to open up my eyes to a lot of behavior, that why do we behave like that, like we do and stuff. Anyhow, and then the Sylvia Earle book that I read. And also I read a book by she was an Afro-American singer, and she used, and I can't remember her name, since I try to remember now, but I can't, to reread the book. But that inspired me. She used her voice for change, because in the day, Afro-American singers, the white people would accept because they have so much talent, but they still weren't treated as equals. She used her notoriety to help that go along. And I read that book, and I said to myself, I feel that I need to do that one day. I don't know. I didn't have any notoriety at all. And I have just in my microcosm here. I'm not a world famous or anything, but that inspired me somehow, and without knowing why or how I was going to use my voice and my art for change.
Do you think that this idea also made you even more, this idea of using your notoriety that you didn't have at the time, was it useful or important to become then notorious, become then renowned, to make you even more engaged in being successful, because then you could use your success to convey the messages you wanted?
Like I say, I don't know. It's the only time, like I say, the internet changed things a lot, because so I wouldn't be on Instagram probably unless it was for my wanting to get this message across. So I lure my followers in by my ceramics and by their love of Deia. So I have the 3-part posts. I post things about my ceramics, things about Deia that people like, the fiestas that we have, a marketplace. I like to promote the people in the market as well, because I love our little market. And then I put other things about Deia, and then marine conservation. Now the government has actually given me a grant this whole year of a marketing company that's doing, whenever there's posts on my Instagram about marine conservation, they keep track of World Ocean Day and things like that, and they post for me about the marine. I give them the content, and they put it together.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I think that, for instance, I use that, my following, to get the message across. And also people buy those tiles, they sponsor a tile for their favorite beach or something like that, and then I put it up on my Instagram as well. So I lost some helpers this year, so I haven't. It's been a little slow going in that direction, but it's still moving in that direction in the future for me.
And these things that you do show also a lot of adaptability to the times, to the means that to the new means of communication that come around. So that's also a skill that I want to point out. You mentioned first that work on self-actualizations that you started doing. So also personal growth came into your life, was an important part of your life, was an interest of you. So what is your journey on personal growth? What things did you try, or what things did change something in you, in the how you see yourself, in how you see the world, how you see other people?
Yeah, you know how it is in life. It's like a dance. Sometimes I'm going 4 feet forward and 1 foot backward. Sometimes I get sidetracked on the one and go on the other, and then okay, we're going forward again. And sometimes I'm going 1 foot forward and 2 steps backwards. But hopefully moving in the direction of that I want to go in my own personal journey of. I've done loads of stuff: yoga, meditation, all kinds of different therapies. Or like one year, I was having a hard year after I divorced. I had 22 years of marriage and then separated. That was a tough time, even if it was my choice. So I did a lot of chakra work. The chakras open. Various times over the years, having some hypnotherapy even. But recently I did with Marina this circular breathing, which recently has helped me a lot, because I've been having personnel problems. So I haven't been able to like I said about my bread and butter line, I have to concentrate myself more on that without the help that I normally have for doing that. And so I haven't really, so that's been last year. It happened the similar situation. And I was in a lot of stress, and then I started to get eczema. But this year, because that same thing happened. So then I had my workers, and then suddenly just before Easter, they weren't coming. And instead of getting all, oh my God, what am I going to do? I just did the breathing. I was like, I'll deal with it. So it helped me to put things somehow in better perspective and not get stressed about it. Just having a feeling of acceptance for what goes on, and knowing that I have resources that I compare. Okay, I could be a Palestinian person and have lost my entire life and my family. So that's really been helpful for me in this year. It was the circular breathing.
That's a remarkable method. And also, as you said, it allows you to accept and to also create a pause between a stimuli that arrives and the action we do. If we take a breath, we also take a break and we allow self-awareness to sink in and inform our actions, instead of just being automatically thrown into doing something that we might regret or that might not be in our interest. So that's it's impressive how only our breathing impacts so much on our state, our emotions, our mental state. So just our breath, no other tools required. It's really impressive. Yeah, you also confide that you were always drawn towards the sea. You were always attracted by the sea, but you also had not always straight feelings with sea and sea creatures. You were scared of fish. And so how did you deal with this fear? What did you do?
Oh, I don't know. I was a fascination and a fear. But at one point I decided, because I would always snorkel on the surface, but go down and investigate caves underneath, or you never know what creatures could come out at you. That was a fear. But then when I was getting towards 50, I decided I was going to break through several fears I had, and that was one of them. So I took lessons in scuba diving, and I got my scuba diving license, and I find it really fascinating to now. Once I got over the fear of not having what if you don't have any breath, I wouldn't go too deep, not like Marina with her. But yeah,
free diving.
Free diving. That it was a breakthrough for me, and it was a thrill at the same time to get over that fear and be able to do that. And
you told me that you chose 3 fears and you in that year, and that you did actions to embrace your fears and to overcome your fears, going in the opposite direction of the direction fear would send you. The fear would send you away from some things, and instead you chose 3 and you went through them, into them. Did anything change after you did these actions, after you embraced these fears in yourself, in your life, in your character?
Yeah, I feel I don't have that same kind of edgy feeling about when I am in the sea. I'm very comfortable. I was always comfortable on top, but so that's not there anymore, which is good. I did have break through this fear of singing in front of an audience,
Mhm.
and I don't feel the need to keep doing it, but I was able to break through it. It's a good feeling because yeah, then it doesn't weigh heavy on my mind or anything. It was a challenge, and it's also making me feel a little more empowered because look at I don't have to be my fears don't have to run my life.
Mhm. So it became a kind of also, you don't have to go through all your fears in this way. You could if you would, if you want to. So,
Well,
as you said.
well, I have a fear of rodents, for instance, and I don't think I need to pet a rat just to get through it. I'm okay with that.
It might be fun.
No,
Might always bring me that a rat in the house. But I also had a kind of fear of rats, and then I became very accustomed of rats.
why is
At least
live in
at
the
least in
rat?
seeing them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It becomes an empowering things to take face some fears and just go towards them instead of away from them. Yeah, one of the last things I want to ask you. You were also engaged in your community. You are engaged in with your activism and with your activity, with your production, with artistic production of ceramics and selling ceramics activity. But you also became involved in the community of artists of the village. So you had to deal with, and also your other activities with collaboration skills. With bringing people together, with trying to do things together, and that I think it's not easy, and it must not have been easy because it requires to try to make people agree on a common decision, on a common course of actions, to put together and work with differences. So would you like to tell us what you did about in this field of community and coordinating, and what you learn from there, or what skills you use there, or what do you think it's important to work together, to collaborate with people? You also have an employee. You have had several employees, employers, sorry. No, employees, sorry. I always mix them up. Employees. So that also require relationship skills and overcoming differences.
Yeah, I did do some work as the representative of the artists in the community. I organized a collaboration of fundraising for supporting any kind of. There were several people from the village, foreigners actually, but residents who were doing some charity work. So I did this 3 years in a row, and I organized the artists together to do this silent auction of these pieces. It was very successful, and we made money, and then people could put their project forward and get some funding from us. It just feels like we as artists, we don't have to be just out for ourselves. We can help others too. And I think it's a good feeling of community building among the artists.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's competition. I feel that competition is, well, good in some ways, but we can evolve and become more cooperative and collaborative. And so that's what I like to promote that. Instead, for instance, I was the only artist in town for many years. Not the artist, sorry, ceramist. There were no ceramists in town. Then this one gal from England came over who she was looking to come and set up a studio here. And she came in and talked with me, and I said, look, I have a place in my garden next to my kiln that you could put your kiln in. And I even have a little casita area that I could rent out to you for as a studio. She and I had we had different kinds of work. But people kept saying, oh, you got some competition in town now, huh? And I don't see it like that. I see, and now I can embrace about I don't know, 12 people in town, not all of them doing professional work, but there's several others. There's 4 others. Yeah, 4 or 5 that are doing it professionally, and we all have different work. And I send my customers down to them, and I think that's the way to go in life. We can all, there's enough for everybody. We can support each other.
That's a nice approach. And it's always a fringe territory, competition and collaboration, and they never actually are they never are totally separated. There's always some collaboration also in competition. For example, fair play. It's about collaborating in competition, and also and often there is competition in collaboration. Even if you collaborate, you have to compete your ideas, make your ideas compete to choose what to do. We better become good at both, at putting our ideas ahead, and also learning to find those common territories and those synergies that can work, that can make us our life better. For sure, that the fact that there are also other people doing ceramics, there could be, I don't know if there could be some exploiting some things together, some scale economies in a way. So there might be benefits to the fact of having competitors. It creates a larger market.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, because that is actually what one of my dreams is to, and I'm organizing for next summer to have a collective show of the ceramic. I'm probably the most well-known one here, but we also have a very well-known sculptor over at the hotel. He's not maybe as well-known I've been around here longer, but that's what I want to do, is to have Deia become known as a place where people can come up to Deia and find various styles of different pottery. So one of the gal that was training with me for a while, she just opened up a little shop down the street where she's doing her art, including some pottery. The gal that I told you about, I rented out the space for her to get started here. She bought a building on the main road that she's turning into a gallery and a workshop so that people can come in and learn how to do pottery. Then a gal, she also worked for me years ago. She's now further along, and she's opened up a gallery right around the corner from my studio, which is totally different pottery. Hers is more of a sculptural type pottery. This is all good for Deia and people. Same with the restaurant business. When we had the restaurant, that we were one out of maybe 2-3 restaurants in the town at the time. 2-3. Anyhow, more restaurants started opening up, and Deia became known for a place where you can go up and get a nice meal. You can have all the way from Michelin star down to a pizzeria. Not down, is a range of food. So you see, that's what you're talking about. That's a good example of it.
Yeah, true. Okay, fantastic. We've almost reached our time limit. As a close-up, I would like to ask you if there is some message you would like to send also through this podcast about maybe the things you care about, marine protection and so the activism you do, or other things you would like to talk about here at the closure of this podcast that we haven't discussed yet.
I can't think of anything. We've covered quite a few topics. Go online and check out my Instagram, or I'm going to be marketing I haven't really started marketing my tile project yet to hotels, municipalities, diving clubs, yacht clubs, and so on. But if you fancy sponsoring a tile for a cleaner coast, you can take one to wherever you live about along the coast there somewhere and put it up. We'll always be helpful. Fantastic. For the cause.
That's great. So in the podcast, there will be a text to introduce the podcast, and I will put the link to your website. I don't know how you promote this and sell these tiles. So we'll put all the reference to this activity and to this action that one can do to promote marine conservation. That's fantastic. And if someone wants to find your ceramics, what do they have to do?
Go on ceramicsbyjoanna.com. 2 N's.
And so do you sell them also online, or?
I'm going to get together. I had been people, but usually it's people who have been in Deia or who somebody who saw my ceramics in their mother's house or their sister's house, and then they go online. But it got with having lost my helpers this year, I had to cut back on that. That's why I'm not over nervous and upset too, because I decided we can't ship this year, but I'm working on getting together to be able to ship, and then people can order once I get that in place.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joanna. I think this episode has been very valuable. There have been several pearls of life skills and reflections that can foster our self-awareness, and I have been inspired by talking to you, so thank you. It's been very pleasant, very nice. As we say, it's been fun for me. I hope it's been fun for you too, having this conversation, and I hope it will be fun for those who listen it. So thank you very much, Joanna.
Thank you. It's been lovely talking with you.
So bye-bye, everybody. See you next time at the Awareness Talks.
Hasta luego.